My name is Ranger Leslie, and we are here at Bonneville Dam on the mighty Columbia River between Washington and Oregon. We are standing on the traditional lands used and valued by tribes of the lower Columbia River. These lands were also utilized by other tribes throughout the Pacific Northwest as part of travel routes, trading opportunities, marriages, and various other important aspects of traditional native lifeways. Long before a dam was built at the Cascade Rapids here, how did this river environment shape these people's lives? And how do these first peoples continue to live connected to the river and its resources today? How are the values of the Cascade Rapids in the past similar to the values of Bonneville Dam today? Let's explore some of these important and amazing questions. This area in the Columbia Gorge has been continuously occupied for thousands of years and has a rich history of cultural trade. One recent archaeological find at Cooper's Ferry, Idaho, suggests that ancient peoples may have traveled inland along the Columbia as an ice-free route during the last ice age, passing the site of Bonneville Dam over 16,000 years ago or more. Not only is the river a great migration route for people, but also for the migrating animals that have moved up and down the river each year. They have shaped human culture for thousands of years. The river was a main cultural center because of its navigable routes and trade networks. The same is still true today, with hundreds of people and goods traveling along the river via cars, trucks, boats, and trains. Let's pause for a moment to contemplate some questions. You could turn to someone nearby to share your thoughts, or write them down on the worksheet or journal. Why has the Columbia River Gorge been such a great place to live? What has been the major source of sustenance or food for the groups that continue to live here? Let's look at this picture here of the gorge in winter. Do you see all of the snow higher up? What about ice in the water? Is there any ice or snow along the river's edge? Think about where you could travel here in winter. Also, what animal lives and migrates through this habitat? Human activities like fishing, navigation, and trade directly rely on the landscape. The Columbia River has been a natural migration corridor and trade route for the tribes between the coast and inland areas because it is an easy passageway through the high, snowy mountains along a canoe river highway. Have you ever tried to travel through deep snow? Which route would you rather take? The same is true today as it was thousands of years ago. Also, before the dams, the river was much lower and narrower, so when it did freeze, the tribes could walk from one shore to the other. That made travel easy. The river created a network of economic interdependence along the migration route, and tribes were able to share culture, spirituality, and technology like fishing techniques. The Cascade Rapids was a hugely important fishing site in North America, similar to Celilo Falls further upstream, which was considered the Wall Street of the West. As a result of the construction of Bonneville Dam and the flooding of the Cascade Rapids, tribal fishermen were pushed to fish upstream, intensifying use at Celilo Falls. The interior tribes from as far away as the Great Plains brought such goods as horses, tobacco, and buffalo robes. Camas roots were traded from all over. Groups from the south and east brought obsidian for tools. The lower Chinookan tribes and other western groups came with elk hides, smoked sturgeon, dried salal berries, clams, and wapato roots. They also brought dentalium shells for use as ornaments and money, plus dugout canoes and cedar paddles. And, in turn, the Columbia River people traded their highly prized salmon further east, north, and south in all directions. The most abundant and important trade commodity, as well as nutritious, protein-rich food source, was and still is, yes, you named it, salmon. Another major food source was lamprey, a very ancient fish that migrates from the ocean back upstream as well. It looks like an eel, but is not an eel. The major fishing sites were the Cascades located here at present-day Bonneville Dam, the Long Narrows, and Celilo Falls upriver from here. Every man, woman, and child ate about 1 pound of salmon per day throughout the year. Before there was a dam here, there was a series of formidable rapids called the Cascades, a natural pinch point in the walls of the gorge, left over from the Bonneville landslide centuries ago. The tribes along the Columbia made dugout canoes from western red cedar to travel with great ease up and down the river and its tributaries. At the Cascades, the Chinook were the ferrymen of the river, helping other tribes navigate the treacherous rapids by portaging or towing the boats along the banks. The need for navigation around these rapids was the reason for raising the water level to flood the rapids by building Bonneville Dam in 1933. Today, the Bonneville Lock is a modern equivalent to the canoe portages that happened for centuries. The salmon fought hard to ascend countless cascading rapids. Native peoples were able to catch fish more easily as the salmon struggled upstream amidst the turbulent whitewater. The Cascade Mountain Range was named after these rapids and waterfalls. Thousands of fish were caught every year and traded. There was a rich abundance of salmon, perhaps 10 to 20 million per year, that passed the Cascades and migrated up the Columbia. In the words of the Columbia River Intertribal Fisheries Commission, or CRITFIC, the tribal cultures in the Columbia River Basin could rightly be called Waikanushpum, or salmon people, for how completely these sacred fish shape their culture, diets, societies, and religions. To call salmon a staple of the tribal diet would be an understatement. Salmon represented much more than a source of nutrition. They shaped our societies and our religions. The native tribes managed a sustainable fishery. Their food source was primarily salmon, supplemented by lamprey, deer, elk, roots, berries, bulbs, and greens. They used many tools for fishing made from trees, rocks, sturgeon skin, and other natural materials. Dip nets were made of wood and fiber. Here is a sturgeon skin rope, made to hold onto a net weight. The way of life of fishing at the Cascades and Celilo Falls was to change in a major way with the arrival of Europeans by the mid-1800s. Fish wheels in the cannery system created a greater need for more and more salmon. For now, let's learn how the Columbia River tribes are continually connected to Bonneville Dam and the fisheries here and upriver. Since the late 1800s, the numbers of salmon and lamprey have drastically declined. Why is this? Overall, changes in land management such as habitat loss, building of dams, overfishing, pollution, and less food for fish in the ocean are some of the biggest reasons why. Fritbeck explains that today they are making great efforts to make sure that salmon return to as many of their traditional waters as they can. Enormous amounts of resources are being poured into this effort, and tribal youth are joining the fight to save salmon. At Bonneville Dam, the Warm Springs and Yakima tribes have been partnering with the Corps of Engineers to install lamprey passage systems to help lampreys survive as they migrate upstream past the dam. This is working well, and there are many more improvements that can be done. What are at least 3 reasons why salmon and lamprey have declined? What is one way to help them? We're so glad you've joined us here for our special on fishing and navigation at the Cascades, and how the geography of the Columbia Gorge has informed the cultures here for thousands of years. Again, what were the reasons that the Mid-Columbia Gorge has been so favorable for living? Yes, that's right, the abundant food source of salmon and lamprey, enough to feed every man, woman, and child a pound of salmon per day for the entire year. The weather was favorable, relatively snow-free in winter, allowing for easy travel and trade. And that's why Lewis and Clark and the Corps of Discovery sought an easy water passage to the ocean in 1805, and why Bonneville is located here, as well as I-84 and the railroad follow the river route today. There are so many more questions to ponder. Will salmon continue to survive and thrive into the future? What are the current challenges of the tribes today? Ask your teachers and community members, local library groups such as Critbic, cultural websites, and museums to form your own conclusions and answers. There is so much more to learn. You can also check out these resources here. Thanks again for joining us.